Take a look at this. There is a deal on the table between the United States and Iran. That's going to be our first segment. At least, that is what Washington says the deal is on the table. Tehran is less certain as per the reports, and we'll break it down for you. And somewhere between those two very positions, the Strait of Hormuz, that narrow oil choke point, remains blocked, oil prices remain high, and the world continues to wait. President Donald Trump said over the weekend that a broad peace framework has been largely negotiated and will be announced soon. His Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who's in the national capital earlier, called it a significant progress. But within hours, the White House was also telling its own negotiators not to rush into a deal, not to push for negotiations so hard, not to accept a bad deal, essentially. And today, Donald Trump, in a social media post, claimed that he would not repeat the mistakes of the Obama era. Meanwhile, Iranian negotiators are in Doha for what are being described as very crucial talks. The broad outline of a framework involves a 60-day ceasefire, a gradual reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, and the beginning of nuclear negotiations. Now, in exchange, Iran could regain access to frozen oil revenues and resume exports under sanctions waivers. In exchange, Washington is demanding that Tehran surrender its enriched uranium stockpile entirely. Iran has pushed back hard on that particular sticking point. Tehran has denied agreeing to move any uranium outside its borders. It has also denied reports that it planned to charge tolls on ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. And before any deal is formalized, Iran is demanding access to $12 billion in assets currently frozen in Qatar. Both sides say they want a deal. Both sides are also drawing lines that make a deal very difficult. Washington's position is firm. Hormuz must reopen without any Iranian restrictions on shipping. Iran must hand over its enriched uranium stockpile. There can be no long-term enrichment program on Iranian soil. Key nuclear sites must be dismantled, and the military option remains on the table if these talks fail, which has been Donald Trump's go-to ever since. Tehran's position is equally firm. Iran says it is willing to reopen the Hormuz, but has rejected the uranium handover outright. It considers domestic enrichment a sovereign right that is simply not up for negotiation. It wants nuclear talks pushed to a later, final agreement, not front-loaded into this framework. And it wants full sanctions relief, not partial, not phased, complete, full sanctions relief. So the big question, what happens next? Because there are real choices here and neither side is without options. On the American side, the most likely path is a phased deal. A ceasefire first, nuclear talks to follow during the 60-day window. But if that collapses, Washington could resume strikes. It could tighten sanctions further, pulling in Israel and the Gulf allies. It could push for a third country solution on the uranium storage. Russia has reportedly offered to take Iran's stockpile. Or it could reopen Hormuz through force and shift to a long-term containment strategy. Iran's options are just as calculated. Tehran could offer limited concessions, enough to get sanctions relief without giving up the uranium. It could delay nuclear talks entirely whilst holding on to its stockpile as leverage. It could use its network of proxies to raise the cost of continued pressure. Or it could use a deal to stabilize internally and rebuild whilst leaning on Qatar, China, Russia, and its BRICS partners for support if American pressure continues. We've got an esteemed set of panelists with us on the broadcast. And the big questions that we must underscore tonight. Can the United States and Iran bridge their deep differences on uranium enrichment and the Strait of Hormuz, the two main sticking points? Will Iran agree to give up its enriched uranium stockpile, or is this a red line that just cannot be crossed? With us on the broadcast, Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, former Indian diplomat. Many thanks for taking out the time, ma'am. Major General S.V.P. Singh, strategy and defense expert. Many thanks for joining us, sir. Adit Kothari, foreign affairs and geopolitical expert. A keen voice always here on News 9. Madam Ambassador, the core idea is no longer about a ceasefire. Likely, we've been seeing the reports as well. It's about who blinks first on these three interconnected pressure points, two of them being the nukes and the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz, Iran's uranium stockpile, and third one being Donald Trump's political need for a strong deal because he's facing challenges back home. And the biggest takeaway is that both these sides are signaling flexibility publicly, but they're protecting those red lines privately. America says progress is happening, Hormuz must reopen. Iran says there is progress, but there is no imminent agreement. Is this really a peace process, ma'am? How do you read this?
Thank you, Kabir, for having me on your show. Yes, it is an ongoing peace deal. The problem is that President Trump does not seem to understand that all sensitive peace deals need to be negotiated without being in the full glare of media and these announcements which he makes on midnight on his account, Social Harmony account or whatever. The other issue here is that I think ultimately there will be a fairly longish ceasefire. The Straits of Hormuz will be open. Iran will not ask for money for tankers to go through Straits of Hormuz because that Iran has been told, not just by United States, but even by countries like India,
Yeah.
etc., that that is a no-no. That's a violation of the international law of UNCLOS, and it's also a violation which creates a dangerous precedent for other states like Straits of Malacca, Panama Canal, etc. So I think that is a done deal. You talk about surrendering enriched uranium. No leader in Iran can surrender that enriched uranium, which was enriched under IAEA safeguards, because it will not be accepted by the people of Iran. Whoever agrees will be lynched or murdered. So that's a no-no. What could happen, as you said, was that there could be a second half period of negotiations on the nuclear issue while the Straits of Hormuz is being opened, is being cleared of mines, and normal shipping happens, crude oil goes back to some semblance of normalcy, etc., which helps Trump, now increasingly unpopular domestically, gives them some breathing space for the midterm. I don't see the Iranians going any further. And when you said, Kabir, right in the beginning, who blinked first, I can tell you that in my perception as a professional diplomat, Trump has blinked 3 times. His first time he blinked was when he said, tomorrow morning, I'm going to erase a 5,000 year civilization. He blinked. The second time he blinked was when he said, I'm going to cause hell for them, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. He blinked. The third time he blinked is yesterday and today, when on one hand he said, I'm not rushing into a peace deal. On the other hand, he said, I have a peace deal. Why is that so? That is the same as sending his Secretary of State to India, who says Trump loves India, Trump loves our PM. He has strange ways of showing his love and his hatred. I would say he's the most unreliable negotiator that I have ever encountered in my career. But there is no doubt he has blinked and he will continue to blink because in this incident, he has actually lowered the prestige of United States globally by dealing the way he did with the Iranians. A huge strategic error. And I hope he doesn't repeat it after this with Cuba.
Ambassador, just a quick follow-up. You say the ceasefire will happen, Hormuz will reopen. Of course, Donald Trump has blinked. The Republican administration will say that's a case of fly in his eye. He was probably, rubbing that out. But, Ambassador, from your professional diplomatic opinion, this seems like a situation of too many sips between the cup and the lip. How long will it actually take then for us to really move forward? We've been at this square one for a very long time.
I think it will move fast now, Kabir, because as I said, this crisis is now beginning to hit the domestic consumer in the United States. He may not care that the oil prices rise in India or anywhere else, including his best friend, the country of the field marshal, where oils are at an astronomical price. But he does care for his MAGA base. And this is becoming increasingly unpopular. So I think that although he doesn't admit it in public, his first priority is to get the Straits of Hormuz open. If
All
in
right.
the process Iran gets back some of its frozen assets, that would be an additional victory for Iran. That may come now, that may come later. But what will happen in the beginning is a ceasefire and the reopening of Straits of Hormuz. Because there, Trump is on his own, NATO has refused to get involved,
Yeah.
and people told him frankly, buddy, you started it, you better stop it. He has to find a way out. This is the only dignified way out for him to
Yeah.
say, I have won, I have opened the Straits of Hormuz on my own, I have done this, I have done that. Let him keep saying it, it doesn't matter. As long as we, all of us, including in India, get back oil to its normal price and the poor people in India,
But
India can get back to normal price in gas cylinders,
no,
that's all.
you're right, ma'am. It's just that, I'm here thinking that maybe patience is going to run out sometime or the other. Macron and Keir Starmer, they've already held that meeting, special talks on the Strait of Hormuz. That's happened. And even as, Donald Trump really does not have that kind of support when it comes to military action in the Hormuz, people will start losing their, patience when it comes to the Hormuz. The Hormuz being the other big nuance. But before I come through that, General Singh, how significant is this reported 400 plus kilogram stockpile of 60% enriched uranium? How practical is this in the strategic terms? What's your opinion on that front before we talk about the Hormuz nuance and bring in Adit?
Well, Kabir, this is the issue today, and it is very vital and very important. This 450 kgs of enriched uranium is the card in the hands of the Iranians. And any ceasefire, any truce, 60 days or not, will be the test where this enriched uranium goes. And to me, the bottom line or the most acceptable compromise could be what was done in 2015 when the Obama-Iran nuclear deal came through, in which December 2015, Iran handed over their uranium to Russia. Their ship had come in December 2015.
Yeah.
But that uranium, I want to remind, was not of the same advanced stage of enrichment that is 60% today. Now, the 60% today gives the handle to Iran because within a fortnight, they can then make use of their centrifuges and have 10 to 12 dirty bombs. So it is as vital as that. And to that extent, United States has failed to meet its goals and aims, the war aims, nuclear advancement by Iran, this enriched uranium, destruction of their nuclear sites, the change of regime. So US actually failed on all counts. But yes, they dominated the military battlefield, and to that extent, they still continue to dominate as against Iran's resilience. So what is the important thing is that in modern conflict, perception management is as important as the
Absolutely.
battlefield outcomes. And so that is where what is happening that today, this situation, 80 plus days war, is in a classic transition phase where the sides are now doing both sides coercive signaling, military brinkmanship, controlled escalation, and that is what is bringing them towards diplomatic bargaining, narrative positioning, and strategic face saving, particularly Trump. Trump 2.0 today needs strategic face saving. And that is what exactly is doing. And that's why today Trump has also come out with a proposal of an enlarged Abraham Accord.
Yep.
Now, what does that mean? Does it not have structural fault lines by itself? Shia Sunni divide, Israel Iran divide to the extent that the Iranian constitution caters that the Zionists should be removed. Their Article 154, 123 talks about it. So how this structural fault line can be removed is a very big thing.
But General Singh, it's
And
all
also-
interconnected, isn't it? He says if the Iran conflict comes to an end, then the expanded Abraham Accords comes into the picture. Of course, it's going to be very tricky how, Pakistan will have to play its own cards and how India must be looking very closely because Asim Munir is going to be a key player. He's been invited to join the Abraham Accords. That's a completely different thing. I'm just talking about the fact that if these talks collapse here, General, what are the immediate military escalation scenarios that one should, keep a lookout for?
Kabir, to my mind, the talks would fail. Firstly, if the Strait of Hormuz is not opened. And to that extent, that is where the compromise is very much feasible. Iran opens it from their side, and the United States lifts the naval blockade. And that's a very feasible thing because they know that the world energy crisis is now getting out of hands. So that is where if those that area, that part of agreement doesn't come through, then the United States will by force try militarily open the Straits of Hormuz, and for which they will require, to my mind, minesweeper movement along with a destroyer. So they try to make a safe lane for the shipping. Now, this is where the most important crux lies. If the talks fail, that will be there. But any other military action in that, options are there, and I can cover it here, starting from this Persian Gulf itself, the beach side, the Bandar Abbas, the Kharg Islands. But then what next? What next? Can they enter the southern portion on and any land war, ground war, boots on ground? No. Similarly, the Mesopotamia front, I will call, through the Iraq, it is not really feasible. That is where the Hezbollah is there. The axis of resistance will activate, and Americans will have to face that onslaught. In the northern is the Caspian Sea. Again, very difficult.
So that face-saving card goes away. The face-saving then completely vanishes if any of these things get activated. You're absolutely right. I think the biggest nuance in all of this is the big Hormuz nuance. I'm going to come back to you, General. Let me bring in Adit. He's been waiting patiently. Adit, you see, let's touch upon the big Hormuz nuance. This is the most important aspect politically and economically for the entire world. Iran is carefully changing the language. I was listening to the Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson today. It knows that the word toll, it sounds like, a blackmail. So service charges for their administrative work, that's what they've shifted to. And that distinction, it matters globally because just like the general was telling us, perception matters on the global stage as well. 20% of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran officially imposed transit tolls. Let's say if it does so, it would trigger massive legal, military and diplomatic backlash, and the energy markets would panic as well. And with this change of word from the word tolls to service charges, they tried to play it down to the markets as well. So publicly, there's a lot of flexibility, but behind the doors, red lines are being protected, needless to say.
Of course, the red lines are being breached, but then who's actually going to be paying for all of the damages caused by the Americans in Iran? How are we expecting Iran to rebuild all of the damages caused by the American onslaught? Because America is not lifting any sanctions. America is not providing any financial prudence to Iran, to the Iranian regime at this point. So they will have to cough up the money from somewhere. And the only monies that they can actually get from at this point is by holding the Strait of Hormuz as leverage, which is a new norm set by the Iranians as of February 28, 2026. This was not a norm prior to this. Even before this, when Iran was attacked by the Americans and the Israelis, they never went down to actually holding the Strait of Hormuz as hostage. So this is a new norm that they know that they can hold leverage and they can successfully ensure that the rest of the world continues to pay for it. So they will continue to do that, which is why even though Iran has been battered militarily, strategically, they are extremely emboldened. It is a new norm that the Americans have now set because of their ill-planned and ill-conceived motion and their war mechanism against the Iranian regime. Now, going forward into this particular deal, a lot of people are saying that this is a 50-50 deal, this is a 60-40 deal. I think the Iranians are very happy to wait it out. I mean, if you see the urgency to get this done is more on the American side rather than the Iranian side. And the Iranian side, because all of the senior leaders are all in hiding. They are in bunkers where there is absolutely no communication. The communication is sort of vague. It's sort of broken up where couriers are basically liaising between them so that the intelligence services are not able to gather their precise locations, and as a consequence there is an immense amount of delay on the Iranian side, which is why the Trump regime is sporadically seen to try and see to expedite this particular deal, and which is why Trump seems like that boy who cried wolf And he cries wolf every Sunday, every weekend to say that, we are inching closer to the deal,
Yeah.
only to soften up the markets. But when the markets open up on Monday, you actually find that nothing concrete has come off from the negotiations that have happened between the Iranian side and the Americans. And the Pakistani side is basically playing fiddle to the Americans, just to say that, we are trying to help, we are trying to
Right
facilitate,
on.
but nothing's actually coming of it.
Right on. I mean, it's clear that the U.S. president is trying to tantalize the markets. From what I understand in this first round of submissions is that number one, Strait of Hormuz is effectively becoming the centerpiece of this entire negotiation, and whether Tehran is going to be able to maintain influence without really appearing to weaponize global trade with those change of words when it comes to tolls and service charges for their administration work. That's something that needs to be taken a look at. But Ambassador, I need to understand, is the White House itself divided between diplomacy and pressure tactics? And whilst you're at it, I'm being told by the control room that I need to slip into a quick commercial breather here. Hold on to those thoughts, Ambassador. A quick commercial breather. And right on the other side, when Donald Trump says progress is real, but also warns that, we shouldn't rush into this deal, is the White House itself divided? That's coming right on the other side with Ambassador. Don't go anywhere. Many thanks for staying within your interest. We continue with our breakdown of this 50-50 deal, or 60-40, just like Adit Kothari, foreign affairs and geopolitical expert with us, joining us live from London, told us just a moment ago. And my very esteemed panelists with me on the broadcast, also Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, former Indian diplomat, and General Singh, who's a military and strategy expert. Ambassador, quickly, one more round of discussions and discourse on this particular deal. Donald Trump says that progress is real, but he has warned against pushing too hard on this deal. A great negotiator, that's what Pete Hegseth calls him. And is the White House itself divided on this particular front? And whilst I'm asking you this, give us a sense of whether, if the sanctions are partially lifted, let's say, without deeper nuclear guarantees, could the United States back at home, like you pointed out yourself in the opening submissions, midterms are right around the corner, could the US face accusations of giving Iran strategic breathing room as well, even as we're saying that Tehran's moves are also calculated at the same time? Ma'am.
My position, Kabir, is that as long as gasoline prices come down in United States due to the reopening of Straits of Hormuz, that will give Trump enough breathing space before the midterms. The White House is, of course, divided because his own vice president was not in favor of this misadventure.
Yeah.
And others, including Tulsi, etc.
Neither was the CIA, ma'am. The CIA, the vice president. I mean, Netanyahu sitting inside the Situation Room, that's unheard of. I mean, it's as good as Xi Jinping being invited again in that Situation Room. Donald Trump, he's changing the cards. My apologies for interjecting. I just had to, put that on record. Donald Trump, he's changed the way how the White House works in the first place.
Well, hopefully, Kabir, it won't be for too long. Let's hope. But as long as he's in the White House, he understands, being basically a businessman and a real estate guy, that there has to be a breather. The Straits of Hormuz have to open. The price of oil has to come down. He has played the markets enough for his friends and family to make fortunes out of these fluctuating oil prices and told. But now it's time for the deal. You raised a very important issue, and one of my co-panelists, as to where is Iran going to find the revenue to rebuild. Therefore, I suspect that in stage two, some of Iran's frozen assets will be unfrozen so that they are compensated for not charging money on tankers going through the Straits of Hormuz. Thirdly, the Abraham Accord uh, issue is deeply linked. It is intended to keep Israel on board. That's why he said it. Because the Israelis trapped Trump into this war. The Israelis pushed an American president into a military misadventure. Now that American president wants to get out, and the pound of flesh being demanded by Israel is that states in that area respect Abraham Accords. It's just all verbiage. Those who want to recognize it will recognize it. Those who will not, and that includes his favorite field marshal, Pakistan. They are not going to accept the Abraham. There are very high stakes for them in any case. So that just shows, as you pointed out, Kabir, the kind of actual hold that Netanyahu has on Trump
Yep.
on this matter and on this military misadventure. But I would stick my neck out and say, I think there will be an extended ceasefire. I think the Straits of Hormuz will open. When that happens, then stage two will come, which would be, as I said, the whole issue of unfreezing the assets, the whole issue, as General Saab pointed out, about the danger of all that enriched uranium there so that Iran can build dirty bombs. There will have to be a procedure in that case, Kabir, by which Iran does not surrender it to Trump. Iran would have to surrender it to the IAEA.
Yep.
That is a process. There is a process in the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, which Iran is a signatory to. I suspect that if Trump would allow IAEA to get involved, that enriched uranium could be taken out without loss of face on either side, Iran or United States. Kabir.
All right, all right. Many thanks, ma'am. General Singh, you know, about the unfreezing of the assets, and just like the ambassador was talking about, if the nuclear issues are deferred to this later phase, like Madam Ambassador just told us, that it is going to, the extended ceasefire will happen, there will be a phased out deal. Does that actually make the deal and the negotiations easier, or is it simply going to postpone one of the biggest conflicts? And even if this framework deal really emerges out, how difficult would it be, again throwing light on the Strait of Hormuz, how difficult would it be to militarily and operationally fully restore confidence in the shipping and the maritime lanes through the Strait of Hormuz?
Uh, well, firstly, all of it which is happening and what you have addressed, Kabir, it is basically the strategic face saving, as I said earlier. It primarily is boiling down to that. You see, back home, whatever we have discussed about the Trump issue, there is also the hardliners in the Republicans,
Yeah.
the MAGA, and that he has to face. There is also that Congress. Congress, his majority is surely closing in the gap. And so that is where this election optics of the American in November is the primary concern of Trump. And here he would like to find that this deal comes through. And definitely, one point about the enriched uranium, I do not think, in my perception, that Iran would agree to hand it over to IEA, because IEA in the real terms has not
They
been
said it
paid
before,
to
General,
Iran.
that they don't want any involvement from the international nuclear watchdog. They've said it before. I'm unsure whether that's really going to happen. But Ambassador says that's important if the handover and the transition of this uranium has to take place.
the Russian part of it, I think, is a very fair deal because in 2015, if it was accepted, it should be accepted
But
now.
then
And
again,
Russia has
General, you
offered.
see, Donald Trump says that he does not want to repeat the Obama mistakes, quote unquote.
So, well, I think then they have to see what they can come through in these 60 days because enriched uranium, Iranians lose their Trump card and that they will not surrender to Trump. I would put it this way because Iran also is showing strategic defiance internationally and they're managing the economic fatigue internally. And they're doing it pretty well because their resilience has come out loud and clear. And this Iran today is being managed by primarily the IRGC. And who are this IRGC hardcore, which you are saying? 1979 Iranian Revolution. These people today are the leaders. They were the youth at that time. 47 years back, today they are in 60s and early 70s. They are managing this. That is why the resilience has been so strongly addressed by Iran and their leadership has not been compromised. The clergy has rightly stepped behind right now to manage the wartime effort which the country is putting in. So all this is a fog for us. You see, I would say there are three fogs which are being there. The military fog, neither side has fully revealed what has happened. We do not know the actual damages. We do not know what has been the missile interceptions which have taken place, the success rates, the stockpile depletions of these countries. We do not know the cyber losses. So the operational vulnerabilities in real terms is really not known to us. Now also is the political fog. How is US balancing it? Through Israel, it is through the Israeli security concerns. And Netanyahu has had a card in this. He is holding the card, and I would say the dagger.
The real Trump
in
card
front
is
of
with
Trump.
Netanyahu, sir. The real Trump card is with Netanyahu. Pun
Yes, I'm
intended.
saying he's got the dagger in hand. I'm saying that, and Trump wants to avoid another extended Middle East war, and I have covered the election optics for that.
Yeah.
So it is, what is really coming now is that both sides have to manage the international environment. They have to manage their domestic audiences, allies and adversaries, the markets. Iran also doesn't want to be seen to be affecting the world markets and the oil. So that's why they are also showing malleability now. Okay, they're ready to open the straits from their side. And of course, that we covered that. That has covered that service charges versus a toll tax. I think that part of it can be managed. So personally, what is more important, which is coming, Trump going to China, then there also they have covered the Hormuz Strait that it should be open. So China is a big card rather than Pakistan. And I think that back channel talks would still be on with China to have this controlled de-escalation coming into effect. At the same time, neither Trump nor the Iranian leadership wants to be seen that they are weak in any kind or they are scumbag.
Absolutely.
So this is where the stakes are very high for Trump.
Okay. There's another caveat to this. We just learnt about it about 2 hours ago. Adit, take a look at this. Iran has demanded access to 12 billion US dollars, assets frozen in Qatar, as a precondition for advancing these talks. Now, Iran appears to be softening language without really surrendering leverage. Is Tehran negotiating from a weakness? Is this calculated resilience? I think it was Ambassador Mukherjee who said right in the beginning, if Iran lets nuclear or this enriched nuclear, uranium go outside Iran, there's going to be mob lynching right there out on the streets.
Absolutely, I don't think they're going to be getting rid of their enriched uranium without any concessions, any sort of strategic leverages shown by the United States, which is why this is a precursor. So they want the Americans to show good faith, because every time they have sat down on the table, they have actually been stabbed on the back by the Americans. We remember how the foreign minister of Oman was on record to say that talks were proceeding really well, and we thought we were getting somewhere, and then February 28th happens.
Yep.
So we know for a fact that the Iranians have been stabbed on the back, which is why they want the Americans to demonstrate a little bit of a gesture of goodwill by releasing these funds, which will give a bit of economic comfortness to Iran. Remember that Iran is going through extreme economic inflation at this point. Even pre-war, their economic inflation internally was almost about 40%. Now that's gone up to almost about 100, anywhere between 150 to 300%, depending on what commodities you're looking at. I mean, rice is at about 300% inflation in Iran. Meat is at
Yeah,
about
yeah,
180 to 100, about 200%. So they want those sort of economic cushioning so that they can actually go back to their public and say, this is what we secured from the Americans, and slowly, they can get back onto the table by negotiating. So these are those negotiation tactics, straight out of the book that actually Donald Trump had written, The Art of the Deal. So in effect, the Iranians are playing Donald Trump's tactic
Is there any art
Trump.
at this on display over here? Really? I mean, General Singh spoke about the face saving. Is there any opportunity for any face saving as well? Because Ambassador Mukherjee rightly pointed out that Donald Trump has blinked more than once, more than twice. He's blinked a couple of times over here. And right now, Washington and Tehran are both speaking the language of diplomacy, but still thinking in the logic of leverage. Many thanks, Ambassador. Many thanks, General Singh. Adit, always a pleasure to have you with us.